Hi, Melina here, trying out a really different filming location. It's gonna be slightly slanted. Screw it. Today is Wednesday, which is Top 5 Wednesday, and yeah, I actually liked this topic, and it was books that we've known since before we discovered Booktube or Bookstagram or any sort of book social media. And yeah, most of these I'm putting ones that I've heard talked about, like on Booktube and on Bookstagram now, because like there's some stuff that I didn't discover, like I discovered before I was like into Booktube and like book social media, but like either way I would have discovered it on my own because it's really underrated and I've never heard it talked about on book media. So all of these are like kind of popular things that I already knew about before entering the book scene, except for one that's kind of an honorable mention, and it's just because my favorite author before I discovered Booktube and any of that kind of stuff was Sonia Sones. My favorite books by her being like the What My Mother Doesn't Know duology, but I don't have those with me, so this is the only book I have of her with me, and this is the one that I most recently read. But yeah, she was an author that I've never heard talked about on Booktube, but I liked all of her books, and she was my favorite before I was exposed to so many different kinds of books. So there's that, and that's an honorable mention. Okay, now this list is going to go from 5 to 1, and it's going to be kind of books that I found out about more recently in my life, and then the earliest one is going to be like the one that I found out when I was the youngest. I don't know if that makes sense. So, of course, I have to have Cassandra Clare books here. The Mortal Instruments, specifically like City of Bones, and like I think all the way up until like the 5th book, and then the whole Infernal Device trilogy and all that stuff. I had read all of those before I got into any sort of like Booktube or Bookstagram like lifestyle. So I already knew about these beforehand. I was in New York visiting family like 7-8 years ago, and I came across this book, and it was like popular new books for teens or whatever, and I liked the cover, and I read the back blurb, and I liked that. So on the plane ride home back to Florida, because that's where I lived at the time, I read like basically this entire book on the plane, and then that's how I was into them before, you know, discovering that. Then at number 4, I still need to get this sticker off. I've only gotten part of it off because I can't do crap with these nails, but The Twilight Saga by Stephanie Meyer. I recently got this copy, so preview to the book haul that I'm going to do eventually, including this one soon. And yeah, my sister was really obsessed with this series. She was in love with this series, and it was way before there was like any movies or anything that she was into them. But I had heard her just like gush about them, and so I decided I wanted to pick it up. But when I was reading the first one, that's when the movie came out. So she was watching the movie on her computer, and I was like, oh, I don't want to see it, I don't want to know anything about it until I'm done with it. And then I ended up watching the first movie after reading the first book, and then reading the other 3 books before seeing the rest of the movies. So this is another one that I knew it was super overhyped. It's just I knew about it before it was overhyped because of my sister, and way before I got into like Booktube. Here is another kind of visual aid one, because I haven't read this book yet, but Stephen King is an author that I discovered before, you know, book media was in my life or whatever, and specifically I read Carrie, which I don't have with me, and obviously everyone like who has even like been into books at one point in their life knows who Stephen King is and has heard of his name and his work, but my sister owned the copy of Carrie, and she had read like the first couple chapters, but then she didn't care for it, so she was just like, do you want this? And I took it, and I read it, and I wanted to read that one first because it was his first book published, and then I became so in love with like all of his work, and I like follow like tons of like bookstagrams now that like just post Stephen King books and stuff like that, but like I had known about him since before. And speaking of, one that I have heard occasionally talked about on Booktube, but I still feel is pretty underrated in general, is the Maximum Ride series. Again, I don't have my books with me, so these are my mom's manga copies. I have manga copies as well, it's just they're in storage. And my mom, my sister, and I all read the first book, The Angel Experiment, within like a week of one another. Like, we were so into these books and we read them together, and it was kind of like we had our own little personal book club, and we bonded through reading over the Maximum Ride series. So it was one of the earliest feelings I had of kind of being in a book community, and I loved it so much. And that's why, even though the series kind of started going downhill, and so I haven't finished it, although part of me kind of wants to reread the earlier ones and then keep going and see if I like it, I'll still have those great memories from like childhood, kind of basically. It was like when I was like 9 or 10. And at 1, I have here the series of unfortunate events. When I was younger, in elementary school, these books and the Chronicles of Narnia series were like my jam. Everybody was like, oh, Harry Potter, because that was the thing to like, you know, in your elementary school years. I read the first book of Harry Potter when I was in elementary school, and I didn't care for it. And I own all the books, they're in storage, and I plan when we have our own setup and I have my stuff with me again in my own kind of library and stuff, I'm going to read through the series and, you know, document it and stuff, and kind of expose myself to the series for the first time, because I don't really remember anything of that first book. And what I do remember, I'm pretty sure it's just me remembering when I saw the movie, like, many years ago. But these and the Narnia ones, that was, like, my childhood loves. Like, everyone had Harry Potter, and I had these specifically because I preferred these, but also, the Chronicles of Narnia, and those were, like, the ones that I watched the movies, and I read the books, and it was the first thing that, like, made me super into it. I have a lot of things that I've heard no one ever mention on, like, Booktube, like the Pendragon series or the Bailey School Kids, and stuff that I've liked way before, like, any sort of book media was in my life, but these are kind of the more popular ones that I had already discovered and had been part of my life before I even got into Booktube. I liked this category, like this topic, and honestly I could keep going with so many that are either underrated or that were popular and I just happened to know about beforehand. But those were like 6, and me giving shout outs to random ones. But yeah, if you liked this video, be sure to give a thumbs up. Hopefully it's not too crooked, because it's trying to balance on the bed and it's not good. And subscribe if you want to see more of my face and my books. Bye!